The season in review videos are going to continue on today with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And as for the Penguins, they're definitely a team that has been regressing the last couple of seasons. And I think we're heading into a really dark time in Pittsburgh. I know this is the third straight year they've missed the playoffs, but I think we really are approaching what is going to be a very dark era in Pittsburgh Penguins hockey unless if things really do change. The Capitals changed things up. They made some moves to make the team better for the next 3 to 5 years, possibly longer. But the Penguins just feel like a team that they want to rebuild so bad, but they can't. So let's go back to 22-23 where they went 40-31-11 for 91 points. They were 19th in the NHL. They were just 1 point shy of making the Stanley Cup playoffs that year. And that really kind of did feel like the beginning of the end. I think a lot of people picked Pittsburgh the next year, though, to make the playoffs. So maybe it wasn't the beginning of the end. It might have been next year that was that. But they went 38, 32, and 12 for 88 points. They were 19th in the NHL as well. They were slightly further out from a playoff spot, but they really weren't that far away, to be honest with you. And I feel like that overall season kind of added to the real delusion that this Penguins team was still a contender. And then this following year here, and the year we just had, said no, they're not a contender unless if they change almost everything up. They went 34, 36, and 12 for 80 points. They were 24th in the NHL. They obviously missed the playoffs. They scored an average of 243 goals for and then allowed 293 goals against. That's a minus 50 difference overall. Not pretty, honestly. It wasn't a pretty year for Pittsburgh. I feel like the big thing was the goaltending that really kind of affected the team at the beginning of the season. It really kind of prevented them from really coming back and really doing much of anything. So, honestly, I thought that overall it was just a really rough year from the Penguins. They went 21, 15, and 5 at home, and they went 13, 21, and 7 on the road. So their home record was good. Their road record was bad. That's about expected from a team that missed the playoffs. They scored an average of 2.95 goals for per game, which was 19th, so a little bit below average there. And then they allowed an average of 3.5 goals against per game, which is 30th. So yeah, their goals against was brutal. Again, the goaltending was really, really bad. It's kind of funny too because Philadelphia had around the same, just slightly worse save percentages than these three goaltenders. It's kind of crazy how the goaltending in Philly is like really, really bad. They have a 25.8 power play percentage, or I guess the goaltending in Pennsylvania is really bad, which was ranked 6th. So their power play was good, like 1-in-4. You're scoring a power play goal. That's good, honestly. And then their PK wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. 77.8, which was 18. So overall, most of their numbers were average to bad. Honestly, the only outlier is the power play, which isn't surprising because you have Crosby, Carlson, Malkin. You have a good roster of players there. It was just a matter of how can you handle it. But again, overall, I really did think that it was just not a good season from the Penguins. There's a lot to look into here in the coming seasons. And I think, again, as I said, we're heading into a real dark era in Pittsburgh Penguins hockey. Their leading scorer, though, was Sidney Crosby, who is still Sidney Crosby. 80 games played, 33 goals, 58 assists for 91 points. The assists and points were first on the team. Again, Crosby, we know what this guy is. He always has great years. He was over a point per game once again this year at 90 points. He's been incredible. I mean, there's really nothing else I need to say about this guy. However, I feel like it's kind of funny because he signed that contract and now he's low-key preventing them to rebuild. I'm not saying that, like, oh, they need to trade Crosby and all this, but he is kind of preventing them from going full-blown teardown here and just tanking the next 2 seasons. So, honestly, I just wanted to put that out there. But Crosby, still a really good player, is kind of holding the Penguins back now from probably tearing it down. Rickard Rakell, 81 games played, 35 goals, which is first on the team, 35 assists for 70 points. Rakell had a really good year. Rakell had a pretty good season. I actually thought they were going to trade him, but they decided not to. I don't know if that's the right play because if next year he's really bad and then you want to trade him, that's a really bad look on Kyle Dubas's part. But again, Raquel had a good season. I think he could replicate that next year possibly. Maybe just a slightly lower point production and maybe a slightly lower goal production. But overall, Raquel had a decent year. Brian Rust, 71 games played, 31 goals, 34 assists for 65 points. Rust was okay. Rust wasn't terrible. Again, most of the players on this team outside of Crosby were pretty mediocre, but I thought Rust had a decent year. 30 goals, can't really complain about that. Erik Karlsson then was fourth in scoring, 82 games played, 11 goals, 42 assists for 53 points. I thought Karlsson, again, look, he has a good offensive side to his game, which isn't as good as it used to be, but his defensive side is just atrocious at this point in his career. And I really do feel like that is the biggest factor with him, like, to be honest. They want to move on from him, but I feel like the money might just be a little bit too much for a team to really take it on. And I think he still has 2 to 3 more years left on that contract. So, you're going to be stuck with this guy probably until the end, or maybe until the last year of that deal. Like, it's not looking great there in terms of moving out Erik Karlsson. But hey, if you can move out Chris Kreider, you can literally move out anybody. The Rangers are proving that right now. They can literally move out anybody on this team. It really does not matter. We'll get into the Rangers here. They're in a couple of days. So, yeah, just weird stuff going on there in New York. But regardless, going back to Pittsburgh, Evgeny Malkin, 68 games played, 16 goals, 34 assists for 50 points. Malkin is nearing the end of his career. You can pretty much tell. I think this whole core really is. Overall, Malkin just seems he's showing signs of slowing down. Missed some time with injury this past year. Just overall wasn't a great year for Evgeny Malkin, comparatively speaking. I think, again, we're in the tail end of all of this. Matt Grzelcyk, 82 games played, 1 goal, 39 assists for 40 points. So Grzelcyk is a UFA. I would imagine he might come back. A good 40-point year there from a second-pairing defenseman isn't terrible. But overall, I think that they might want to move in a different direction, or maybe Grzelcyk wants to move in a different direction there as well. Chris Letang, 74 games played, 9 goals, 21 assists for 30 points. I heard some rumors a couple of days ago, or it might have been yesterday actually, seeing Letang possibly get reduced ice time the next couple of seasons as he's heading into his 39-year-old season. I'm not shocked at that. This guy is old, and he's kind of regressing pretty hard here, and I think he's still a very talented and good defenseman, but he may not be what he was. So I do see the thought behind that, but overall, Letang, just not a great season. Danton Heinen, 79 games played, 9 goals, 20 assists, 29 points. I believe Heinen came in midway through the year. Okay, I guess, a good middle sixer. Philip Tomasino also came in midway through the season. 61 games played, 11 goals, 13 assists, 24 points. The only difference from him and Heinen is that I think Tomasino was traded to the Penguins in, November, and Heinen was traded there in, February. So, again, I thought that, Tomasino could be a good young piece in the future. He's still, I think, relatively young, 22, 23, but even still, I'm not terribly high on him. And then Kevin Hayes, 64 games played, 13 goals, 10 assists for 23 points. If you guys couldn't tell, this Penguins team is just a bunch of, and I hate to say it, but it is just a bunch of, old, cheap, or mostly cheap, and expired out of their prime veterans. I feel like that's what most of this team really is, to be honest with you. You have Crosby, who is incredible, who will keep them in contention for a lot of the time, but I think overall just the team itself is not particularly great. I just hate to say that. Your goaltending was pretty atrocious, actually. Their save percentages and all that was terrible. Alex Nedeljkovic, 14, 15, and 5 with a 3.12 goals against and a .894 save percentage. It's actually, diabolical that the Penguins had that decent of a record, to be honest with you. Being only 2 games below 500. Now, again, you have 12 overtime losses, but, even still, it's pretty diabolical looking at how the goalies were this past year. Nedeljkovic was pretty bad. Tristan Jarry, 16, 12, and 6 with a 3.12 and a .893. Jarry, I don't even want to get into it with Jarry. He might get bought out this offseason, to be honest with you. Just looking at Jarry, I think there was a stat where he allowed, a goal on, the first shot, the second shot, the third shot, the fourth shot, the fifth shot. over 10 times on all of them. Like, that's actually insane to be doing that. So Jari had a really rough season. I'm surprised he was above 500, to be honest with you. And then Joel Blomqvist, who I'm still really high on. I think this year wasn't really a definitive year for his development. 4-9-1 with a 3.81 and a .885. Pittsburgh has some good goaltending prospects coming up in Murashov, Blomqvist, etc. I've seen some of them play in the ECHL and the AHL. As a Phantoms fan going to all those games, yes, I am a Flyers fan. Don't click off the video. But overall, I think that this wasn't a definitive year for his development. I still think he's a very good player, but even still, we'll have to see what happens next season with Mr. Joel Blomqvist there. The Penguins made a lot of trades. They made some trades that weren't that big, but what Kyle Dubas did really well was gain draft picks for future drafts. Like, not a lot of first-round picks, not a lot of picks from that perspective, but honestly, I really did think that they overall, had some pretty good deals they made. Starting off with some of the early ones, they traded Lars Eller to Washington in exchange for a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick. I think that's good asset management there. You trade away, your third-line center for a third and a fifth. You'll take that. You will absolutely take that. They also acquired Tomasino for a fourth-round pick, so that's a young player there who, obviously really struggled in Nashville. He wasn't that much better in Pittsburgh, but even still, that's a guy you can build on here moving forward. They traded Anthony Beauvillier for a 25 second-round pick, so they got a second-round pick there for Anthony Beauvillier. That's really good asset management for a guy who was, on the third line for the Penguins this past year, but he was good in Washington. I'm not going to say, he was a bad player or anything. Then there was the big one where they traded Marcus Pettersson and Drew O'Connor to Vancouver in exchange for Danton Heinen, Vinny Desharnais, Melvin Fernstrom, and a 25 first-round pick. That first-round pick is conditional. Pettersson was the only player on this Penguins team that really had any value to move on from. The rest of the guys were second-round picks and third-round picks, unless if you traded Rickard Rakell, which I still think they should have done to this day. But overall, you get Heinen back, you get some roster and depth players. And then the first-round pick, I'm not sure that's going to be this year. That's the Rangers' first-round pick. I think there is still some time to really decide if they want to give the Penguins that pick, or they want to keep that pick and give Penguins the next year pick. I'm not so sure that's a good idea, though, if you're the Rangers. But we'll get into the Rangers here in just a couple of days. They also traded Michael Bunting and a fourth-round pick to Nashville in exchange for Tommy Novak and Luke Schenn. They did a really interesting job at acquiring young players from the Predators. I feel like a lot of teams did that, honestly. And then they flipped Schenn to Winnipeg for a 26 second-round pick and a 27 fourth-round pick. That's really good asset management by Kyle Dubas. I thought he did a really good job at managing that overall. And then I have two other trades here. They made a lot of deals this season. They acquired Stillman, Graham, and a 27th third-round pick in exchange for Cody Glass and John Gruden. And then the other trade they made was acquiring Connor Dewar and Timmins from Toronto in exchange for a fifth-round pick in this year's draft. Again, overall, they did a really good job at managing their assets, getting some draft picks for not just this year, but next year as well. So taking a look here into the American Hockey League, where you have the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins, who went 40-24-7-1 for 88 points. They were 11th in the NHL this past year, the AHL this past year, and they lost to the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in round one. No hard feelings, Penguins fans. I know you guys might not like me because I am a Phantoms fan, but I thought it still was a good year from Wilkes-Barre. They had some guys down there who were really developing, and they did have some guys who were able to come up into the NHL. So that's a good positive there as well. I think that really is, something you can look at there as guys who can come up there and have a positive impact. Ville Koivunen led the scoring, 63 games played, 21 goals, 35 assists for 56 points. We will get into Koivunen in just a moment. He's in our prospect pipeline. Boris Kachuk, I forgot he was still playing. 67 games played, 21 goals, 28 assists, 49 points. Emil Bemstrom, 48 games played, 23 goals, 25 assists, 48 points as well. Sam Poulin, 57 games played, 19 goals, 24 assists for 43 points. And then Avery Hayes with 60 games played, 23 goals, 19 assists for 42 points there as well. So they had some good guys down there developing in the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins pipeline. I think Koivunen's an exciting prospect. I like Bemstrom there as well. I think you have some exciting pieces to look at here heading into the future for this Penguins team. And as well as that, you're going to get the 10th overall pick, I believe, in this year's draft, or the 11th overall pick. I think that is very good, and I really am looking forward to seeing who they're going to take with that pick as well. You look at the pipeline. You have Harrison Brunick, who is the number 1 ranked prospect according to the Hockey News. 41 games played, 5 goals, 25 assists for 30 points. He played 10 games in the AHL this past year. Brunick is like a defenseman type of player. I think he's somebody that could be an NHLer soon, to be honest with you. I think he possibly spends like maybe this next year in the American Hockey League and then comes up to the NHL in a year from now. But I like Brunick a lot. I think he has the real aspects and attributes to his game that he can be an NHLer. Rutger McGroarty then up next, 60 games played, 14 goals, 25 assists for 39 points. He played 8 games in the NHL this past year. Rutger came up at the beginning of the season. They gave him a little bit of a chance, and then they were like, all right, this kid is not ready. And then they sent him down to Wilkes-Barre where he developed. He played good hockey. And then he obviously came back up at the end of the season and played some more NHL time. But again, it's kind of funny considering the fact he was moved off from Winnipeg because it, quote, didn't feel right. And he also wanted more of like an NHL opportunity. He gets that in Pittsburgh and he shows that he's not ready at all. Like, it just is kind of funny to me that went down the way it did. Emil Pieniemi, I believe I'm saying that right. I know I'm probably butchering that and pissing off the Penguins fans. But 60 games played, 10 goals, 50 assists for 60 points. Point per game there in the OHL is okay. It's not like the greatest, but he could be a good, middle sixer or fourth pairing guy. I think he really could be a solid player in the NHL. Tanner Howell then up next. I'm higher on this guy than the Hockey News is apparently, but 47 games played, 18 goals, 28 assists for 46 points. I will say this, though. I feel like his more realistic upside is likely going to be a third-line center or a third-line player. I don't think he's going to be like a second-line type of guy in the NHL if he does make it there. Just his numbers in the WHL aren't that sexy. I know he did miss some games, but even still, I'm not so sure about that. And then again, as I said, Ville Koivunen, 63 games played, 21 goals, 35 assists for 56 points. He had 8 games played in the NHL this past year, so Koivunen got some shots and some chances there in the NHL, but I think overall this Penguins pipeline has some good guys coming up, but you really needed a guy who can bona fide it, and I hope that the 11th overall pick will help out with that. But they also have some other picks too, where the scouting department is going to come into play. They have a first in this year. They have a second, which belongs to Washington. They have 3 third-round picks, one of them being their own, one of them being Minnesota's, and the other being Ottawa's. They have a 4th and 2 fifths, one of them being Minnesota and Chicago's, and then a 6th and a 7th as well. So you're picking in every round of this draft, essentially. I think that does matter. And again, I think for the Penguins, you need those draft picks. You need those picks to really pan out, and those scouting guys to draft gems in the later rounds. So I guess we'll have to see there. In terms of free agency and all of that, it's not that big of a list. They don't have a lot of guys they need to move on from or sign, to be honest with you. Your UFAs are Matt Nieto and Matt Grzelcyk. So not that big of a list. I guess Grzelcyk maybe because he's a second-pairing defenseman. And then RFAs, Philip Tomasino, Connor Dewar, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and Connor Timmins. There's really nobody on that list that screams out to me, and I'm like, wow. Honestly, I think it's a very small list of guys, and I don't really think any of them are of that much importance. So I think, again, the Penguins are going to have some cap space to work with here, or at least a little bit, to maybe try and make a move. But overall, I think that it's going to be a very uneventful offseason for the Penguins, unless if they decide to move on from Erik Karlsson and stuff, but I don't really see that happening. Overall, the Penguins are looking like it's going to be a dark next couple of years, but again, I won't hold my breath. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like the video down below. Please do consider subscribing. It'd be greatly appreciated. But anyways, that is it for me. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.